Moving on to the next session of the day, we have how retailers are innovating customer experience on cyberspace driven by deep tech analytics lead, which is loyalty, experience analytics, and digital. The session is moderated by Ruben Pandian, Chief Omnichannel and Strategic Alliances Officer, Tata Clee. Can we please have a huge round of applause for Ruben Pandian? Joining him on stage, we have Caroline Leong, Chief Customer Officer, Timezone. Can we have a huge round of applause for ma'am? Bhavik Shah, Head of Loyalty and CRM Metro Brands. Mr. Bhavik Shah. Can we have a huge round of applause, please? Will Park, General Manager, Revlon India. Annajee Nott, co-founder and director, Vinculum Group. And Sachin, Jain, managing director, Forevermark Diamonds. A huge round of applause for all our esteemed speakers. And over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Very good morning. It's a topic which, given an opportunity, the esteemed panel can go on for the rest of the day. We'll try and keep it precise and as interesting as possible and as relevant as possible. Quick thing, if you look around, you would see technology everywhere, people talking about technology. The interesting thing is there's one aspect of technology getting absorbed, the other aspect of technology evolving itself. Human beings are absorbing technology. You will see nanobots kind of eating cholesterol. There are prosthetic limbs being computerized, people getting controlled. So that's one end of technology. Other aspect of what we are all here for is from a retail aspect, how are we innovating to deliver the greatest or the best consumer experience. One spectrum, we have a set of people who used AI, who use CRM tools to ensure that there's a loyalty, there's an engagement which is far value added than what it used to be many years ago. And the other end, we have digital innovations or consumer solutions which the consumer has not experienced. Let's take, for example, in China, we have car trials which don't typically happen over a phone. You have a multi-story building with all your favorite cars from Ferrari to Maserati to all the likes of the Ford standing. You walk into the space, check in with your Face ID, get your credit rating coming in. Credit rating approves that you're good enough to check that car. You walk into the premises, the car rolls out which you've chosen, the car is made available for you for 7 days. You test drive the car, decide whether you want to like it or not before you move on to the next car. That's where technology has moved on today. We have geofence, which we've been talking about for the last 10 odd years. Google's been driving it. Multiple other companies have been talking using GPS. Cell phone providers have been using some technology to make it even more sharper. But we have a lot of upcoming small companies which have innovated, coming up with various patents where they've managed to zero in on technology where you can identify or detect customers at a relevant location to an accuracy of about 2 feet. If that's the technology, that's the kind of information which is available, how do we make this experience an augmented one and a delight for the consumer? Without taking too much time, I'll move on to our esteemed panel. Maybe I'll start with Carolyn. If Carolyn comes from Timezone, that's purely an experiential zone where we will share her thoughts in terms of what Carolyn is changing in the last 5 years, which has Timezone as a company has invested in to ensure that the experience is in line with what our customer experience is today.
Okay. Hello? Okay. Yes. Thanks, Ruben. So I think Timezone, we don't sell physical products. What we sell in our venues are experiences. So for Timezone, I was telling Ruben that we sell the word fun. So when people come to Timezone, we want them to experience fun. And our guests will remember this in their mind even after leaving the venue. So what we've done in the past 2 years is we've embarked on a digital revolution, digital transformation, because we know that once they leave the venue, our guests go online. You know, they will continue their experience online with Timezone through the digital platforms that we create into our virtual store online. We use CRM systems, EDM and text execution systems to engage them and bring in the data, of course, of how they have been experiencing their games in our store to talk to them in a way that we know them. So we noticed that our customers are a lot more responsive to us and a lot more engaged with our brand when we talk to them in the way that they behave in our store, whether they like this game that they played, whether they came here yesterday, whether they're planning to come here tomorrow. So the future for us in this online and offline and back online digital journey for the customer is to make sure that we create channels for the customer to talk back to us. You know, it's not just a one-way conversation, and like to mimic the actual venue where they interact with our teams, we want to make sure that in every channel and every touch point, we use our digital technology to make that happen.
Is there any innovation that you've done in the recent past? Similarly, we talk about Disney saying once you engage with them in the digital space, the experience for the customer offline and online is completely seamless. They give you a band, so your entire day's journey is connected, whether you're engaging in rides, whether you're reticketing, whether you're standing in a fast line, whether you're having food. They've invested in a lot. So customers' experience is moved to the next notch.
Right.
What have you done in the last maybe couple of years to take this experience to the next level?
So right now we're actually implementing it. So our version of the band is our tap card. So we're changing all our technology of the cards into a tap. And not only do you tap it in the store, so what we're investing in, and it's been rolling out in some countries, is that you can have the cards even online in a mobile app on your mobile site, and your card is your Timezone loyalty. That's how we engage with you with this tap card, and that's how we recognize you and we know that what kind of customer and how you are important to us.
Lovely. Sachin, just to take a completely wide spectrum, Sachin, from a diamond business, how does an engagement like this, your engagement, your consumers' expectation is matched in your domain?
I think it's interesting because, while she's talked about a very current consumer, when you buy jewelry and you buy diamonds in the perspective of an Indian consumer, all of us, immaterial of what economic strata we're in or which geography we come from, all of us have a concept of a family doctor and a family jeweler, and that jeweler has been your jeweler for multiple generations. Now that's evolving. The concept of trust is evolving. The concept of modern retail is evolving. So, I think from where we come from as jewelry sector is that our stores aren't the most conducive to say, come hang around. Walk into my store when you're serious to buy a jewelry piece. I think that change is what technology is helping us on. Storytelling is coming to a completely different new meaning. I mean, for example, I can give you what we've done in the stores, and that was your question. The fact is that how many times do we tell a consumer that your diamond is older than Mount Everest? It's really a miracle of Mother Nature. We don't do that. What we do is we have the greatest tool that our sales guy has is a calculator, and is a tag, and he gives a discount. That's it. So we have a long way to go, and we're taking that path in a very strong manner so that we want consumers to engage with the category more. And there's enough technology that's coming in, lots of things on recognizing the consumer, his needs, customizing options to him, but really magnifying this glorious miracle of Mother Nature. And that's what we're really doing at the floors.
Will anything in the beauty and cosmetic area that, China, I'm told, has about now today 6,500 ladies' washrooms which are digitally equipped. You can browse, experience, and that unit dispenses lipsticks, face masks, everything just at the click of a button. Is Revlon in India spearheading something to deliver a similar experience in India?
Thank you. I think in all of this technology, all of this involvement, you have to take a little bit of a step back, perhaps, and think about it from the perspective of the consumer being overwhelmed with all of this. And I think it's really, really important that the reason why brands existed in the first place was to allow people to make a choice, to have trust in the valuation of the brand and how the brand is experienced. And I think if you're a consumer on the receiving end of all of this, it can be really confusing, and we shouldn't forget that. And so as a colour cosmetics business, we have over 100 stores in India and hundreds of SKUs. It's very, very important to keep the choice as simple as possible for consumers. So in our stores, but also in some of the partners we work with, we're trying to help people and identify the offers that have worked for them in the past and will work for them in the future. Because if you lose that trust, that's why people chose you in the first place and why we as an international brand pioneered a lot of these things, then they'll wander, they will go to other people, and we will lose them. So I think it's not perhaps a direct answer, but I think we forget confusion, complexity at our peril if we're retailers, whichever category we're in.
You articulated very well. The word simplicity, I think wherever experiences succeed is if that framework or that brand manages to simplify the delivery of that engagement. It's scalable, it's consistent, and the expectation, there's no dissonance between what the delivery is and what next bit. Annajee, you were mentioning simplicity. So in your experience, how have you simplified the process from a back-end perspective to deliver or help retailers deliver a great consumer experience?
In terms of doing right from a customer experience, one has to look at the overall customer journey in terms of giving options to customize, in the way you segment the customer in terms of what they're doing, in terms of personalizing to their needs, and then targeting the right things for the customer. In terms of doing that, you take a step back first and understand what is it that you want to do right by the customer, what kind of experience one has to give the customer. You think along those lines first before you get technology involved. A lot of times you get through the sequence of fads in the technology and then try to fit that technology into the solution that you're trying to do, which is a reverse way of doing it the right way. So our focus is always to keep the business process simple and easy and targeted towards achieving the goals that the business wants to achieve by the customer.
Fabulous. I think that's a fair point. First, get your processes in place before you actually incorporate technology, rather than get technology and try and fix process later. I think fabulous point. Bhavik, in your experience, let's extend the same conversation from a loyalty aspect. Sachin mentioned that pretty much whether it's diamonds, of course, whether it's apparel, everyone is looking for that deal. And the loyalty factor is kind of slipping. I can switch loyalties at the matter of a 10% discount. How are we changing? Sachin is changing it directly to saying, am I selling stories vis-a-vis products and categories? That's one direction. What have you done in your experience at Metro?
So honestly, what we believe is that we are into a service industry and not a footwear industry. We are selling services. And from that mindset, we are training our staff, which is at the ground level, because they are the one who drives your loyalty factor to the customer, because that's where the consumption is happening. Moreover, customers demand anything and everything. So they would be looking, for example, their wedding is coming up and they would like to have a customized made to order. So we do not deny that thing. We actually give that services, and that also brings a bit of a loyalty factor in them that, that builds a trust and faith of the customer. Apart from that, we have actually optimized our solutions, our POS and the loyalty platforms, where the store itself is telling the customer that, sir, you have an X amount of points or X amount of offers exclusively for you. Would you like to redeem it in the same transaction? So, when you try to help your customer to save $2, the customers really value you back, and they would keep on coming to you because they know that, okay, hey, this is the guy who is going to save 2 rupees for me, and that's what I'm going to keep on using. Apart from that, the basic fundamental principle of having a loyalty program, what most of the people fail to understand is that you need to be a bit of generous in rewarding the customers. At the end of the day, the struggle is to get the customers to the doorstep and collect the data of them. So Metro, always gives out 4% of their reward points against whatever you spend. And
let me interrupt you. Is loyalty always a tangible reciprocity principle, or can it be an intangible?
It's actually both, honestly. Yeah. So tangible because customers always love something to get back. In terms of a cashback, in terms of points, in terms of discounts, because that really attracts them, and that actually helps you to seal the deal at the moment. But after that, what you do with the data, with the customer, how you engage with them, with the help of slicing the data and the analytical tools, it really helps you to build that relationship over a period. For instance, we started something called a program anniversary. I mean, generally, most of the times I don't know the anniversary of the customer, but what I know is when the customer registered into the program. And if it happens to be 1 year down the line, I would like to, probably as a relationship, as a brand, I would say that, okay, hey, it's our anniversary, here's, something for you. And that really, we try to build an intangible value with them. And that probably can get converted into the sale. So I would say it's both tangible and intangible.
Lovely. I think consumer experience, a lot of experts have spoken about how do we deliver experience. There are 4 fundamental parameters which are very tangible. One is, of course, any experience which is quick. So we say, how do we deliver a quick experience? How do you deliver a relevant experience? And create a framework which makes the engagement convenient. And of course, it needs to be reliable. That means every time you deliver it, it's very reliable and comes back to it. From a time zone perspective, Carolyn, what is it that, which out of these 4 have you focused on? Is it speed? Is it relevance? Is it reliability? There's a lot of talk about multiple solutions which are personalization. Have you done any level of personalization kind of engagement which says, I know you, you visited my zone 4 times in the year. How do I make this, the 5th visit, far more engaging than, again, a mundane visit by a new set of people? So what level of personalization have you got into your engagement with your customers?
Well, I think first to answer your question on which of these 4 things, I think that, well, in addition to saying all, I think that what we focus on is the experience. So the first thing is the consistency in experience, and I think that for us drives loyalty, and for us loyalty is preference, right? So we want our customers, and we track in surveys and awareness studies that our customers prefer us as a destination when they're looking for somewhere to go to have fun with a family or friends. So delivering that consistent experience is key, right? Secondly, using the digital platforms, and the data that we collect, we can engage them on a personal level, like you said. So we no longer do shotgun blasts of messages just to everybody, because we know that the modern customer, they know when it's a shotgun blast. So they rather have it speak to them like we know them. So we use data like games they played, when they came, how often they come, to talk to them so that, like you said, the second time they come back, we know them better, and we can know what, we can enrich their experience. For example, if we know that they play a certain kind of games, and we know that they haven't played a certain kind of games, but based on what they like to play, we know they'll probably prefer that one too, or when we have new games, we would recommend that to them to enhance their experience the next time they come in. And also, of course, driving them into the venue, which increases their loyalty to us, increases our business and our footfall. So the entire journey is customized and managed in a way that enhances their experience.
Will, you mentioned that before we actually get into technology, we need to simplify what we offer and consistently deliver that experience with the customer. But given the plethora of visibility that the digital ecosystem is today giving, there are people who are investing way ahead of the curve. So whether the likes of Amazon, the multiple technology partners, whether it's Google, and the kind of information which is available on pure test basis from a lot of, and that's kind of bridges the benchmarking exercise that the customer gets today versus what they start anticipating. Given that, let's say for Sephora, for example, is giving screen testing of your skin type, people are talking about DNA testing of what kind of cosmetics to use. In that array, what will you, of course, you need to keep that as a reference point, as a guiding element. Where will you plunge in, or where will you kind of start picking up elements of this for you to evolve your offering to be able to be in line with the evolution of the experience, anticipation, or expectation from the customer? The challenge that most retailers today are facing is customers evolving. The percentage of time that they're spending in the digital array is significantly more. They might not be converting that physically in terms of transaction, but because of that engagement, the expectation level kind of change. That means the benchmarks are constantly moving. How do you keep pace with that and continue being relevant?
Right, you raise an awful lot of points there, actually.
Yeah.
So I'll try to unpack that a little bit, if I might. I think that one of the premises for this session was about consumer loyalty in India, and has it changed? Are people less loyal? I actually think, having worked in India 20 years ago, that consumers are loyal. However, their expectations are dramatically different, as you've said. So what we then have to do is match our offerings to those expectations. Relevance is so important. And so whether you're buying new systems or anything that are going to help, they need to be relevant. But also, it needs to work for you as a brand. So the investments that are being requested and made, I'm not always convinced, frankly, that the investments are appropriate to the sort of return that the brand is getting. The other thing I think we tend to forget when we talk about all the data for customers and consumers is that the data is not necessarily our data. It's been quite well spoken about, certainly in Europe now with GDPR, that the data is customers' data. It's not our data as retailers or brand owners or anything else. And I think there have been in the news recently, several €100 million fines to people who've misused data. So I think this is another dimension that needs to be considered with all of the technology, all of the issues around how we interface with customers. And so relevance is very, very important, but then also how we use the data and how we communicate that relevance is also really critical.
I think Will has raised a very, very valid point here. The data that retailers have do not belong. It's a paradigm shift in terms of how one needs to think. Is most retailers think that this is our data and cannot be shared. Fundamentally, this data belongs to the consumer. One, we need to respect that. Two, we need to give it privacy. And three, what I mentioned earlier on reciprocity, if you value add on that data, the customer opts in and is willing to share more information, which means your customer experience that you could possibly deliver improves. As a community, I think this aspect, what Will has raised, is accepted by us. I think what we manage to deliver to the customers will significantly enhance as a shared resource rather than this belongs to me versus that belongs to somebody else. Coming back to diamonds, I think you were right in the sense diamonds used to be very family-driven business, or jewelry used to be like, this is my family jeweler. How is it changing? Because the earlier one, diamond was what was known by the jeweler. You trust the jeweler and buy. Now, because of the internet and the plethora of information available, everyone seems to know a lot about cuts and quality and where it's sourced from, what is right for me, and diamond is no longer a novelty. It's a fashion statement starting from $5,000 going on to multiple lakhs. In this array, in this journey, what does Forever Diamonds do?
Well, from the fact of consumer transparency, as I was talking about trust, that's evolving. We think a consumer, when he or she walks into a jewelry store, I'm not even talking, a youngster, when she walks in a jewelry store, she's seen a category minimum 6 times online, and possibly she's browsing while she's in the store looking into a category, because the regularity of purchase is perhaps once in 2 to 3 years. And I think that's an important aspect as to what you bring online, the content and everything, and make the consumer aware and educated as to what the industry is all about. So that, this whole concept of when I'm buying a diamond, it's a big question mark whether I should or I shouldn't, whether I'm going to get cheated or not, has to be the last worry. So transparency becomes important. As for Forevermark, that's what we're bringing on. We're bringing 100% guarantee to the consumer as to what that diamond is or not, which I think is not going to be a debate in the coming years. That's the base on how you'll sell. Today, that's the biggest concern. I think in the coming years, transparency will enable that. But I'd like to reflect upon loyalty, and that's what you were talking about. And I think when we believe a consumer is a high-end consumer who's putting large sums of money to buy, and he's evolved in a certain manner, he completely differentiates the concept of what Caroline mentioned about mass mailing, mass SMSs and all of that, to saying, is this personal for me? And I think, if we aren't ready to give an experience or a loyalty patting on the back, personalized to a consumer, then it's not worth it. What I'm trying to say is that you have to think from a perspective of making tribes out of consumers, not necessarily age brackets. You have to give them something that's special. So for instance, can your data, that we talked about simplicity and other things, can your data tell me what's my favorite restaurant, who's my favorite chef, to that level of detail on my birthday, and do things around it, not necessarily saying that wish me a happy birthday. So I think we as marketers have to evolve, and the amounts of money we put on advertising to get new consumers, I think there's enough relevance to put relevant monies to maintain loyalty, and the mood of changing loyalty is changing, and technology is helping there. But it has to be personalized to a level where he says, wow, man, that's, it's made my heart beat faster. Not that I've got a printed pamphlet of redeem 20 points and things. It has to be personal to me. And if your loyalty program cannot enable that, perhaps don't even waste your time on it.
Which is fundamentally the relevance logic has to be significantly more.
It's humongous.
Yeah. Another area which I wanted to touch upon, I think Bhavik and both Annajee can add a little thing, is we have technology now. We are perpetually on our cell phones. We have apps which are tracking us directly, voluntarily, involuntarily, with permission, without permission, which means there is though a consumer is spending maybe 60% of his or her time on the digital space, there's a physical aspect which is also getting tracked. So there are solutions coming in geofence areas. There are solutions where personalization engines are picking up, do I go to a hospital, do I go to a school, which car do I drive? Given that, then there's an automatic dynamic profiling getting created. Is there a value add here where your basic data of the consumer working in your ecosystem and mapping that to the consumer's entire ecosystem? How do you link these two to deliver a better experience? Given permission, of course, like Will's raised, with the GDPRs coming in, we need to be very aspect of that. But there is, like I said, if you give value to the consumer with the sanctity that, yes, your PII or your personal information is safe with us, they will give you as long as you deliver on that value. What, are you considering anything or have you experienced anything that you will be able to leverage an experience like this?
Yes, if the person feels the information is used for the right purposes, they'll be willing to give as much information as they possibly can. And there is a balance in terms of being bombarded with promotions, but if the relevant information is used to target relevant promotions, which is personalized to the needs of the user, they'll be willing to give as much as information as possible. Couple of examples. You look at Amazon, for example, they personalize everything in terms of upsell or relevant sell based on the purchases you've made or the searches you've made. We all give information in terms of our date of birth and things like that to an airline. We give our profiles to the airline. The object is I don't have to fill that again. When I travel again, my basic data that I have to require to input in every single transaction is already out there. Similarly, for a retailer, if they already know that I like a particular type of fabric, particular type of fit, and when the salesperson guides me towards that direction, then that becomes really, really important and relevant. When it is not done for the right purposes and you get bombarded with hundreds of emails, SMSs, mailers, that's when you do things wrong. And that doesn't work as well in terms of doing it.
How do we take, see, Carolyn mentioned, all of you are mentioning the same thing, one should not be spammed. So, but there is a set of communication which needs to go from a retailer. How do we blend that with relevance and make it contextual to a set of consumers so that they don't see it as a bombardment, they see it as a relevant one and meant for me, personalized for me? Can you share an example or a perspective in terms of where this could possibly lead to?
Definitely. See, in terms of, this is what marketers do, right? They do drip campaigns for that reason only. They try a certain thing. If the consumer does not respond to a particular set, there's an alternate path that you try. If it becomes relevant, then you go along that path. And the key thing here is you do not repeat the same thing again. Once you know the path a consumer takes, let's say, I like to receive only emails, but not SMSs. In that case, the object should be that, you do not see that SMS one more time. You will always do an email. Now, the thing is, again, the frequency. Do you do it daily? Do you do it once a week? To remind is okay, but there is that balance of frequency and the relevant content getting pushed. If not this, something else is what one has to try and achieve.
So that relevance is basically you'll have to get a midware which kind of an intelligent layer which kind of sifts through
Correct.
what is relevant and what should pass through to this consumer and what should pass through to another consumer and what should not pass through at an opportune time. If the timing is not right, if the consumer is not right. So there is an intervention of tech again coming in. So we'll come back to that. That's why tech again comes back saying, so if a mid-layer comes in, is it worthwhile to basically look at a transition where I'm saying I personalize it? How do we localize it? So for example, now I have a personalization is one aspect which comes down to a smaller place. Let's make it even more sharp. So after personalization, let's make it local, which is, for example, Metro has about hundreds of stores in the country. how do we make those stores relevant to a customer whose access point is far more convenient than traveling 20 kilometers or moving cities?
So, like you rightly said, one is the physical aspect of the store and building the convenience and the experience around it. But somewhere, I think I'll again touch upon the tech, because tech really plays a vital role to understand the customer psychic, the preferences. For instance, like creating a path, your path or your buying behavior would be different than mine. What you buy and I buy would be different. But what we also try to study is from the physical store aspect is the kind of inventory being bought, the kind of sizes being bought, the colors being bought, and what is working how, and what is the price point in fact. That also plays a vital role. Because if I happen to put up a premium product into the store, I'm sure it's not going to sell. And then I can't crib about that, the sales are not coming because I'm not having the right product for the customers to absorb at the right time and as per their convenience. So that's the one side of the story. The second is a man buying a product. The cycle, the latency, recency would be different compared to the women buying the product. So from the tech side, we need to understand that what is that time gap? What is that difference? And based on that, your communications, your campaigns, your relevancies has to come into the play. So that's what we are trying to do over at Metro.
I raised this question specifically because we were also discussing earlier. A lot of forums, discussions have happened. Tech is great. It's something which you can't avoid. But from a retailer's perspective, does tech give you an ROI within a 2-year frame or a 3-year frame? Or does one have to invest way ahead of the curve for it to make sense? I think, Sachin, your viewpoint on this, specifically from a luxury perspective, maybe your ROIs might be a little better than other categories. So I just want to hear from your end.
I think scientific retailing and how tech impacts our business is humongous. Today, modern tech allows you to display products which are physically not there. In our category, it impacts hugely on the capital employed. So you could have a range of 2,000 diamonds which are very well augmented to a consumer, not a listing format, hugely real at the floor, but they're not physically there. That impacts hugely in terms of how your capital is employed. I think there's great amount of learning that we're getting from RFID readings and the data analytics there. So for instance, my interest always is not about the top sellers. It's about what's not selling, which is getting tried on. So today all our stores have RFID readers where if 5 products get tried on, one is that's selling, what's wrong with the other 4 that's not selling? I think there's some great analysis there, but great returns on investment on the technology employed because the capital employed on these products is too high. So I think surely there. I think the other bit would be that, our retail stores per se, I think they're great formats of communication. And store facades, we put some, modern AI-based technology where the content that's showing to A consumer versus B could be different. So if it's a single man, the communication will be different. If it's a couple, it'll be different. If it's a family, it will be different. And I think that hugely impacts. And you can easily gauge the extent of walk-ins that happen to the store and stuff like that.
Okay, quickly, we've got the last 10 minutes, so if we can just wrap up. Annajee, your perspective in terms of on data sanctity and data discipline in terms of creation by the retail fraternity?
Right, there is a humongous amount of data that a retailer collects. Like you rightly said, the mindset typically is it all belongs to us. And that's shifting from that angle into where the data actually belongs, which is in the hands of the consumer. Now this data, a lot of data is collected, but traditionally that has not been used to provide relevant and consistent experiences for the customer. So with today's technologies, that is shifting, and it is possible to start small, build upon relevant goals that you have in the near term, and have a broader timeline for you to achieve consistent business goals using those data points. And once you do that, the question of getting the derived mileage of investments in technology will automatically fall in place.
Will?
I think what's really important here is self-knowledge, actually, and also understanding of consumers. It's back to that. So when I talk about self-knowledge, I mean we as brands, whether retail brands, consumer brands, have to really be clear about what our offering is. And that sounds very fundamental, but sometimes I think we can forget that. And then we have to understand our customers and our consumers, because the commercial transaction or the relationship is all about the interface between those two. So, I mean, if I can be specific, we have 100 stores throughout India. When we talk about knowing ourselves, we have a very specific portfolio of SKUs. We have over 300 SKUs, so we better get that right. So we make sure that we have a core portfolio of SKUs. Now, the SKUs that sell well in Tamil Nadu are very, very different to what sells well in Guwahati and also what sells well in Gujarat. And so therefore the customizations within our brand, within our portfolio, is very, very important to the very, very different sorts of consumers we find. So I think that understanding has to sort of overlay all of the opportunities and offers and products that we can supply and add to the brand. And if we get that right, the ROI points, all of the investment points, frankly, they'll look after themselves.
Carolyn, for you, closing comments?
I think for us, our investment in technology is to support our marketing strategies. And for me, as champion of the customer in my organization, it totally drives an ROI because we enhance the customer experience. So our technology allows us to deliver better customer experience in every touch point. So not only in venue, but after the visit, before the visit, and we can track how the customer interacts with us online and then offline in venue with the technology so that we can tell what kind of returns we're getting in which channels and where to put more investment. So for us, we've bumped up our investment in the past 2 years to increase this engagement. And for us, it's very easy to see the ROI when we see our customers coming more often into our store, having more fun, as in AKA playing more games and spending more time in our store. So absolutely, our investment in technology is going in the direction where we're driving more ROI for us and more benefits for our customers. So it's win-win.
Bhavik?
So currently what is happening is there are a lot of tech solutions we have adapted, be it loyalty or a complaints department or a feedback tool, or inventory management, CRM. So what we realize is that we are eventually spending up a lot and the returns is very less compared to that. So I believe that we should start consolidating that entire platform into one and try to have a better understanding of the technology, have more clear, crisp objectives that what you need from the system. So that is what actually we are trying to do at the moment, where we are improvising, we are optimizing the solutions, make it more ROI effective, and so that helps all the departments and not just specific departments. So we are looking to consolidate and build a CRM solution which can really benefit at large, not only just marketing, loyalty or e-commerce, but even other departments like business development, sales team, and eventually down the line empower the store managers because they are the ones who are driving the entire business for you. So more power to them, more business to you. So that's what we're looking at.
Sachin?
From my point of view, I think the perspective of this muscle called try something new muscle has to be stronger. We, I think, as retailers and brands should be trying out more than what we do, because I think the sheer life of these solutions isn't that long. And it's not that that's the solution, that's my set solution for the next 10 years. So I think we need to keep trying new things. But as what Bhavik said and what Caroline's also mentioned is that, keep things simple. They should work to the consumer and not overwhelm them at the retail. That'd be my view.
Lovely. I think just to summarize, I think all my esteemed colleagues have very clearly called out. One, of course, we need to any process needs to be simplified. It needs to be relevant. So whatever investment that we need to do in process, all technology has to bring in relevance. If we are relevant to the consumer, we will always be in the priority list for consumers, and that's the key output that we as a retailer need to derive, because with the changing age, loyalty factors are getting redefined in terms of what loyalty is, because customers' demand and the ability for a retailer to deliver against those demands is always challenging. So given that, relevance and reliability, if you invest in, our ROIs are going to be well in advance. And there's one third point which I want to highlight is, in the changing scenario, something which retailers, I believe, have not done in the last 20, 30 years is collaborate. I think if retailers within an industry, within a consumer fraternity start collaborating, I think Sachin used the word tribe. I think that the retailer tribe together starts investing in harvesting and investing in consumer data. I think that's an area which will clearly give a very high ROI for the retail fraternity. I think thank you very much, and it's been an honor engaging with my esteemed fraternity. Thanks, Carolyn, Cans, Will, Annajee, Bhavik, and Sachin. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Can we have a huge round of applause for our esteemed panelists?